on the Ukraine scandal. They may hit the White House with a subpoena tonight. They're also turning up the heat on Vice President Mike Pence. Ready for a standoff. The president is threatening to defy impeachment investigators unless their inquiry is approved by the full House. Tonight, Mr. Trump is trying to persuade Americans not to believe evidence against him that they can see with their own eyes and that came out of his own mouth. With conditions, we're breaking down a series of damning text messages that show how the Trump administration pushed Ukraine to investigate Joe Biden, dangling the promise of a meeting with President Trump. CNN obtaining new information about crucial testimony. And changing his story, a Trump appointee reportedly told a GOP senator that aid to Ukraine was tied to the president's push for investigations. Why did the diplomat later deny any quid pro quo? We want to welcome our viewers in the United States and around the world. I'm Wolf Blitzer. You're in the Situation Room.
This is CNN Breaking News.
We're following breaking news. The White House could be hit with a new subpoena at any moment. Tonight is the deadline set by House impeachment investigators demanding information about the Ukraine scandal. And in a separate move, Democrats are asking Vice President Pence for documents related to his possible role in the push for Ukraine to investigate Joe Biden. Also tonight, Mr. Trump is threatening to defy Congress and withhold documents unless the full House formally votes on an impeachment inquiry. It's another day of rapid-fire developments as the intelligence community watchdog met with lawmakers behind closed doors, and CNN obtained new details on testimony by the former U.S. envoy to Ukraine. This hour, I'll talk to a key member of the House Intelligence Committee, Democratic Congressman Sean Patrick Maloney. And our correspondents, analysts, and other guests are also standing by. First, let's go to our congressional correspondent, Sunlen Srifati. She's up on Capitol Hill. Sunlen, impeachment investigators, they are ramping up their demands for information from the White House.
That's right, Wolf. This is intensifying for the White House tonight. Very quickly tonight, the three very powerful House committees, Oversight, Intel, and Foreign Affairs, they are ready to formally issue subpoena of the White House, subpoena for documents related to the Ukraine controversy, related to the withholding of military aid. And they have not, of course, been turned over yet, with a deadline set of today. Now, this also comes as those same powerful committees are focusing in now on Vice President Mike Pence, demanding documents today from him related to the Ukraine controversy, related to his meeting with the Ukrainian president face-to-face last month in Poland, and what exactly he knew about that July 25th phone call between President Trump and the Ukrainian president. So as Democrats continue to push forward in their impeachment inquiry, continue to push forward for investigative materials, information, and documents, they are making it very clear that if the White House continues stonewalling these requests, that is going to factor into their potential articles of impeachment. And Democrats see that as only strengthening their hand. Wolf.
The intelligence community's Inspector General, Sunlen, as you know, he appeared behind closed doors up on Capitol Hill today. What are you learning?
That's right, and that was a very long testimony, about 7 hours in length, where the ICIG met with lawmakers behind closed doors, just wrapping up up here on the Hill in the last hour. And the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Adam Schiff, coming out in the last few minutes with a statement saying, in part, quote, "While we cannot get into the substance, we explored with the IG through documents and testimony the reasons why he found the whistleblower complaint to be both urgent and credible. Now that we've all seen the call record, we can say the IG's determination was correct in both respects." And lawmakers coming out of that closed-door meeting, Wolf, telling us that Michael Atkinson really focused in on, during his briefing, how he specifically handled the whistleblowers investigation, and specifically how he went about corroborating the whistleblower's complaint, even handing over documents to back that up. Wolf.
All right, Sunlen, thanks very much. As House Democrats make new demands off the White House tonight, President Trump is defiant. Let's go to our chief White House correspondent, Jim Acosta. Jim, the president says he's not sure if he'll cooperate.
That's right. Well, President Trump threatened to fire off a letter today saying the White House will not cooperate with the House Democrats in their inquiry until they hold a vote on that impeachment inquiry. We're still waiting to see that letter. We understand it may come now as early as Monday, and there's a bit of an internal debate, we're told, going on behind the scenes as to whether or not they will actually issue that letter. Now, as for this request for information from Vice President Mike Pence. His office has just responded with a statement saying it does not appear to be a serious request. So at this point, it appears both the White House and the Vice President's office not really cooperating with either end of that investigation. But President Trump was in damage control mode today, trying to clear up his plea for help from China and Ukraine to dig up dirt on former Vice President Joe Biden. His performance today seemed aimed at fending off charges. He's seeking the help of other countries to get him reelected. With mounting evidence he solicited foreign interference in the 2020 election, President Trump is changing his story, insisting he's now more interested in rooting out corruption than investigating former Vice President Joe Biden.
I don't care about Biden's campaign, but I do care about corruption. His campaign, that's up to him. Politics, that's up to them. I don't care about politics. So we are looking at corruption. We're not looking at politics. We're looking at corruption.
But that's not how the president laid it out the day before, when he directly called on Ukraine and China to dig up some Biden family dirt.
It's a very simple answer. They should investigate the Bidens. By the way, likewise, China should start an investigation into the Bidens, because what happened in China is just about as bad as what happened with Ukraine.
Now the president is claiming he never thought Biden would win the Democratic nomination.
I think it'd be an easy opponent, but I never thought Biden was going to win. I don't care about politics, but I do care about corruption.
And Mr. Trump could not answer whether he was seeking corruption probes in foreign countries that don't include Democratic candidates.
Have you asked foreign leaders for any corruption investigations that don't involve your political opponents? Are there other cases where
we would have to look?
So far, at least one Republican is not buying it. As Utah Senator Mitt Romney tweeted, by all appearances, the president's brazen and unprecedented appeal to China and to Ukraine to investigate Joe Biden is wrong and appalling. But Romney is mostly alone in the GOP. Florida Senator Marco Rubio tells CNN affiliate WFOR Mr. Trump is just trolling the media.
I don't know if that's a real request or him just needling the press, knowing that you guys were going to get outraged by it. He's pretty good at getting everybody fired up, and he's been doing that for a while. And the media responded right on task.
That may explain why the president is confident the Republican-controlled Senate will hold its ground and keep Mr. Trump in office if House Democrats vote to impeach.
They have no choice. They have to follow their leadership. And then we'll get it to the Senate, and we're going to win. The Republicans have been very unified.
But the impeachment inquiry has found its way to congressional town halls. Iowa's Joni Ernst got an earful at one in her state.
Where is the line? When are you guys going to say enough?
Yeah, good question. So,
aren't you breaking the law asking for foreign help?
The president is also not answering whether he had violated the law. The chair of the Federal Election Commission says the law is clear. It is illegal for any person to solicit, accept, or receive anything of value from a foreign national in connection with a U.S. election. Mr. Trump appears to be relishing his latest firestorm, claiming his battles with the media have invigorated the Christian faith.
I got a call the other night from pastors, the biggest pastors, evangelical Christians. They said, we have never seen our religion or any religion so electrified.
The president is describing the latest job numbers in almost biblical terms.
Asia is doing poorly, to put it mildly, and we continue to do very well with the miracle.
Now, the president says none of this has to do with politics, but check his fundraising requests all this week. It is worth noting he is now fundraising not just off of the Bidens, but now this impeachment call from Democrats. Mr. Trump has been telling his allies all week he doesn't believe he's done anything wrong in seeking foreign help for his reelection next year. A source close to the White House who has spoken with the president this week says Mr. Trump is now going for broke on this issue. Wolf.
Jim Acosta at the White House. Thank you. Now we have new details about key testimony in the impeachment investigation, along with a series of incriminating text messages. Our justice correspondent, Jessica Schneider, is working this part of the story for us. Jessica, CNN has obtained the opening statement to Congress by the former U.S. envoy to Ukraine.
We have, Wolf, and in it, Kurt Volker went step by step to explain why he connected Rudy Giuliani to Ukrainian officials and how it was all in an effort to convince Giuliani and in turn the president that Ukraine's new president could be trusted. But we're seeing tonight that the president wouldn't listen and was convinced the Ukrainians had tried to take him down in 2016. Former U.S. Special Envoy to Ukraine Kurt Volker's opening statement to lawmakers obtained by CNN today details Rudy Giuliani's influence on President Trump's perception of Ukraine as he tried to convince the president that Ukraine's new government was serious about stopping corruption. Volker revealed that he met in late May with President Trump, who insisted Ukraine was a corrupt country full of terrible people. The president said, "They tried to take me down." The president referring to a theory that it was Ukraine, not Russia, that interfered in the 2016 election. That has been debunked. Volker also released pages of text that show how the Trump administration, with the help of Rudy Giuliani, was determined to push Ukraine to investigate Joe Biden and his son, as well as that debunked theory. On July 25th, the day of Trump's phone call with Ukrainian President Zelensky, Volker texted Zelensky's aide. Heard from the White House, assuming President Xi convinces Trump he will investigate, get to the bottom of what happened in 2016, we will nail down date for visit to Washington. But Volker insisted in his statement he never took part in an effort to encourage Ukraine to investigate Joe Biden, saying the suggestion that he would be influenced in his duties as vice president by money for his son simply has no credibility to me. I know him as a man of integrity and dedication to our country. But Volker's involvement in influencing Ukrainian policy is clear from this text in early August to Rudy Giuliani. "Hi, Mr. Mayor. Had a good chat with Yermak last night. He was pleased with your phone call. Mentioned Z making a statement. Can we all get on the phone to make sure I advise Z correctly as to what he should be saying?" The statement was supposed to lay out how Ukraine would pursue corruption investigations into the 2016 election and a company Hunter Biden was involved in. But that statement was never released. On August 30th, the top American diplomat in Ukraine, William Taylor, tells Volker that the president has canceled his trip to Ukraine. The next day, Taylor texts Gordon Sondland, a prominent Republican donor and U.S. ambassador to the European Union. Are we now saying that security assistance and White House meeting are conditioned on investigations? Sondland responds, "Call me." On September 9th, Taylor again brings up the point. As I said on the phone, I think it's crazy to withhold security assistance for help with a political campaign. Sondland texts back hours later, defending the president. "I believe you are incorrect about President Trump's intentions. The president has been crystal clear, no quid pro quos of any kind." And tonight, conflicting accounts of whether the president tied military aid for Ukraine to the country's assistance in investigations. The Wall Street Journal is reporting Republican Senator Ron Johnson says that the U.S. ambassador to the EU, Gordon Sondland, told him there was a quid pro quo. But when Senator Johnson asked the president, Trump flatly rejected that the two were tied. And Senator Johnson also said he told the president it was Sondland who told him the aid was tied to Ukraine's help. But then, of course, as we saw from those texts, just days later, Sondland insisted the president had been, quote, crystal clear there was no quid pro quo. And Wolf, we may get an answer from Sondland about what he said. CNN has confirmed with two sources that Sondland will testify before 3 congressional committees. That will be next Tuesday. That is earlier than he had originally been scheduled to appear.
Yes, Sondland, the U.S. ambassador to the European Union, a political appointee, not a career diplomat, not a career Foreign Service officer. Thanks very much for that, Jessica Schneider reporting. Joining us now, Congressman Sean Patrick Maloney. He's a Democrat, serves on the House Intelligence Committee. Congressman, thanks very much for coming in. So what do you make of what Senator Ron Johnson, a Republican of Wisconsin, has told the Wall Street Journal that Ambassador Sondland did tie military aid to Ukraine, which was being held up, to the president's demands for investigations?
Look, it's pretty crystal clear what is happening here, and we've known the basic facts for a few days now, and these texts only confirm them. They confirm the president's misconduct. They confirm that he sought assistance from a foreign government. That's enough, by the way. You don't need a quid pro quo. He doesn't have to give anything of value in return for that. It's illegal to request foreign assistance or receive it in a political campaign. But it's quite clear that he was dangling the White House visit and security assistance on getting an investigation that would harm a political rival. These texts only confirm it. We understand Ambassador Sondland, the ambassador to the European Union, is now scheduled to appear before Congress, I guess behind closed doors, on Tuesday. What do you want to ask him? I want to ask him exactly what was said in that phone call with Ambassador Volker. I mean, it's quite clear that he wanted to take it off text message because he was worried about what was being documented and do it by phone. He needs to answer for that under oath. Secretary Pompeo, the Secretary of State, he has tried to delay these depositions
by current and former State Department officials. Has he now signed off on these interviews?
Look, the Secretary of State has some very difficult questions to answer. And the fact that he was listening in on the phone call and somehow neglected to mention that for days.
The phone call between the president and Zelensky, the new Ukrainian leader.
The critical phone call between the two presidents. We now know the Secretary of State was on that call. And his actions do not suggest that he's trying to get the truth out here. They suggest that he's trying to further the cover-up.
Well, what stood out to you in the text messages that Volker did provide your committee? We've now read them all, and some of them are pretty alarming.
They're alarming. They're also heartbreaking that we have come to the point where an American president is engaged in this unholy alliance between foreign policy and his own political advantage, where he is corrupting career diplomats and civil servants to try to further that scheme. And I think Ambassador Volker has some tough questions to answer. But the fact is that it is the president. It is the president whose conduct we need to focus on.
Let's talk about the vice president, Mike Pence. I know your committee, the committees now are seeking documents from the vice president. The vice president's office put out a statement saying that your demand for these documents does not appear to be a serious request. So what are your options here?
Yes, look, I think it's what the chairman and the speaker have made clear is that they're not messing around, that they are going to consider at this stage obstruction of Congress to be an additional impeachable offense. So the White House needs to provide information if it is requested, or they need to be held accountable, and that needs to happen fast.
But you hear the administration officials say that all your requests are not really all that legal because you didn't have a full-scale vote on the House floor formally opening an impeachment inquiry. The House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, now says she may take a full vote on that, even though she says it's not required by the majority to do so. Where do you stand on that?
I'll leave that decision to the Speaker, but I think my colleagues are more than willing to be held accountable for their view on this.
You think there are 218 Democrats, maybe one or two Republicans, who would vote for a full-scale impeachment inquiry to be formally authorized by the full House of Representatives?
Look, we're all going to have to stand up and be counted soon enough. I don't understand the Republican position. If their position is we should rush it before we get out the facts, which presumably might help the president if he has nothing to hide. I mean, is their position that we should rush such a serious vote before we've had all of the key people come in and explain themselves, before we've seen the documents? Now, none of us is going to be stonewalled, and I'm more than willing to take a vote anytime, any place, but I'll leave that decision to the Speaker.
You would vote in favor of that kind of vote, right?
Absolutely, I would at this stage. I think that the facts are important to uncover, though, and the American people deserve a full exposition of the facts before the Congress asks them to go through.
So you support a full-scale impeachment inquiry. Are you ready at this point to also support impeaching the president?
That decision is for the Speaker to make. I think that she has been, understandably, holding herself to a very high bar for putting the country through an impeachment. I agree with her approach, and I'll leave it to her to make that decision. I do think it is important to move expeditiously, but we also need the facts.
Congressman Maloney, thanks so much for coming in.
My pleasure.
It's going to be a lively few weeks right now. We'll watch it together with you. The breaking news continues next. House Democrats could issue subpoenas for White House documents at any time as the impeachment inquiry escalates. And now they're also seeking documents from Vice President Pence. Will he comply? On the impeachment investigation, House Democrats have just filed a new subpoena demanding documents from the White House. They're also requesting documents from the Vice President, Mike Pence, and it's all part of an urgent push to explore the president's efforts to get Ukraine to dig up dirt on his potential 2020 opponent, Joe Biden. Joining us now, Senator Richard Blumenthal, a Democrat who serves on the Judiciary Committee. Senator, thanks so much for joining us. We now have the letter. This is the letter written by three committee chairmen in the House: Elijah Cummings of the Oversight Committee, Adam Schiff of the Intelligence Committee, Eliot Engel of the Foreign Affairs Committee. A letter written to the Honorable John Michael Mulvaney, better known as Mick Mulvaney, the acting White House Chief of Staff, saying they want key documents involving the president's role and other administration officials' role in squeezing the Ukrainians for dirt on the vice president, the former vice president, Joe Biden. What's your reaction?
My reaction is that this kind of corroborating evidence is going to be very powerful in showing how wide-ranging the involvement of other officials was, not only the vice president, but obviously the attorney general, who went abroad seeking aid for the same kind of interference in our election, dirt on Biden and other officials in other countries through Secretary of State Pompeo. But fundamentally, the facts here show the president himself, in that call to the president of Ukraine, tried to leverage taxpayer dollars and bring pressure to bear on the Ukrainian president to interfere in our elections. There's a grave national security issue here, an abuse of power by the president himself. And for all the corroborating evidence, what's important for Congress to do right now, and certainly I'm going to be doing it, is keep our eye on the ball. It's the president of the United States that really is at issue here, and his abuse of power.
Your Republican colleague, Senator Ron Johnson, tells the Wall Street Journal that one of the president's handpicked ambassadors, Gordon Sondland, the ambassador to the European Union, told him that military aid to Ukraine was linked to Ukraine launching investigations into the Bidens and the 2016 election. What's your reaction to that?
Number one, the holding hostage of military aid over the Ukrainian president is not only an abuse of power, it is also a grave threat to our own national security. It was a gift, in effect, to Vladimir Putin. Russia is involved in attacking Ukraine. It seized Crimea. Russia is testing us, and the president, in effect, is sending a signal to Vladimir Putin as to whose side he's on. But second, there's no need for a quid pro quo for there to be an abuse of power here. The president is saying, I would like you to do us a favor. His words. And what he is asking the Ukrainian president to do is, as you've said so well, dig up dirt on a political opponent. That is a violation of law, but more fundamentally, it's a violation of the Constitution, of his oath of office, and an abuse of power that is more than justification to move forward with impeachment. And the American people, I think, are reacting to it, even though, sadly, and I think tragically for them, my Republican colleagues have remained mostly silent, including Ron Johnson.
The text messages that now have been released, provided by the now former Special Envoy Kurt Volker, do you believe they constitute evidence that there may, in fact, have been a specific quid pro quo?
They do constitute evidence of a quid pro quo. There is probably more evidence of a quid pro quo, and the House Intelligence Committee and the House itself is only on the cusp of additional evidence, is the best information we have. But again, fundamentally, a quid pro quo is a real abuse of power, but the leveraging of taxpayer dollars, the seeking of foreign interference in an American election is an abuse of the president's duty to the American people and to the Constitution.
Senator Blumenthal, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
There's more breaking news just ahead as impeachment investigators confirm they just subpoenaed the White House. Also breaking, Senator Bernie Sanders gets out of the hospital and his doctors reveal he suffered a heart attack. Democrats just hit the White House with a new subpoena as President Trump warns he may defy impeachment investigators. We're covering all the breaking news on the Ukraine scandal. Our correspondents and our experts are here. David Chalian, the White House now facing this new subpoena, but do you think anything will change in how the president decides to respond?
No, I think that it's going to still, the White House, the president, they're still going to respond with resistance. I think that's clear in the way they've responded to each one of these requests. And we even heard from the White House that they're now suggesting that Nancy Pelosi has to hold a vote on the House floor to open this impeachment inquiry, which is not spelled out in the Constitution at all, in order for them to start even thinking about responding. It seems to me, Wolf, these requests, these subpoenas, I will be very surprised if they just get resolved amicably between these two branches without heading to the courts.
Yeah, I assume they're going to go to the courts as well. Abby, just a little while ago, the vice president, his office was requested some documents from members, the House majority documents, but they responded by saying, this is the vice president's spokesperson, it does not appear to be a serious request. Are they just brushing off what the majority in the House of Representatives is asking for?
It seems that, as David said, the strategy is just simply pushing back on all of this, delaying as much as possible. But it's not clear how long they can continue to do that. You know, the Congress has a clear responsibility and ability to request these kinds of documents. And if the White House is going to push back, they're going to have to put forward some kind of real rationale for doing that. And it might very well end up in the courts. But clearly, the administration thinks that they can just dismiss it for the time being and see what the consequences are at a later date, because delay in and of itself is the strategy here.
That said, we are in a completely different world now. We've seen the White House rely on this Stonewall strategy, but this newest letter issuing the subpoenas out of the House Intelligence and Judiciary Committees this evening makes clear failure to comply with these subpoenas is itself evidence of obstruction of justice. We will move forward on a negative inference. And so the White House really is in a lose-lose position. Either they have to produce these documents or their refusal to produce them themselves itself becomes impeachable conduct. So the incentives here are very, very different than what we've seen over the past 2 years.
I will add, I think that's what they know, and they think they're headed to an impeachment vote anyway.
Right.
So if they're heading there anyway, they're saying we don't even need to bother putting forward these documents because you guys are going to vote to impeach this president one way or another.
You know, it's interesting. The Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, he had a deadline today that's come and gone, seeking documents from him, seeking all sorts of subpoenaed evidence. But so far, he has declined. Let's see what happens before the day is completely over. But it's in sharp contrast to what he used to say when he was in the majority, a Republican member of Congress from Kansas, investigating Hillary Clinton and Benghazi. We went back and looked to see what he used to say then.
Our goal is really quite simple. It's to get every single fact we can get, every document, every witness, and to put together the puzzle, the mosaic for the American people. It's not about politics. It's just about getting this story to the American people. Issues like, are all the documents available for Congress to review? Have all the witnesses that have relevant factual information presented themselves? The president didn't turn over all the documents in response to a congressional subpoena. Sure. And that's just unacceptable. And so we're gonna go get all the documents. We're gonna go get all the witnesses. We're gonna find out precisely what happened. We need to make sure that this administration doesn't cover up, doesn't deny, and doesn't withhold.
All right, that was then, and this is now.
Hello, pot. This is the kettle. I mean, it's Secretary Mike, meet Congressman Mike. And I remember all that stuff over Benghazi. Months and months and months of investigating that led nowhere, that got to nothing. So now, look, it's where you sit, where you stand in this town. He now sits in a different place, and they're trying to slow roll this to keep it from moving forward. So he's simply playing politics.
And it's not just an institutional stake. Pompeo also has a personal stake here. This is not just a scandal about the president. This is a scandal in which Mike Pompeo is personally deeply involved in it. And so he's someone who is ambitious. Reportedly, he's considering a Senate run in the future. He's someone who's thinking a lot about his political future. And so this is a scandal that might not just result in things like the impeachment of the president, but consequences for Mike Pompeo, potentially even impeachment of Pompeo himself, certainly would substantially, dampen his political prospects.
And the Volcker text and all the stuff that came out today just, I think, further shows the degree to which the State Department was involved in this.
You know, David Chalian, the House Democrats, I think they were hoping for a final vote on impeachment, articles of impeachment, by Thanksgiving. Is that realistic at all?
Well, potentially. I mean, we'll see here how quickly it goes. Nancy Pelosi, the speaker, last night in Florida said, we don't have to do much of an inquiry in this impeachment inquiry, meaning that so much of the fact pattern is already in the public domain that this seems to be moving quickly. The phone call, the complaint, the text messages now, the president's own words, a lot is already out there. Congress has never known Will for moving very quickly, obviously, but this goal of doing it expeditiously is still very much on the speaker's mind.
Yeah, I mean, I think we are only 2 days now into testimony on the Hill. The first day produced some of the most substantial developments in this probe, principally this question of what was the reason this aid was held up, and was it linked? Were people in the government of the belief that it was linked to Ukraine investigating the Bidens? that has all been revealed. So I can't even imagine what we're going to learn next week when more people are coming forward and testifying as we kind of reveal more information about this. There are clearly a lot of people within this government who believe that there was something nefarious going on. They wrote a lot of it down. They moved the transcript to a secure server, and we're finding out about that pretty quickly. I think Nancy Pelosi is likely to be able to get to that.
All right, everybody stand by. We have some breaking news coming into the Situation Room on the Democratic presidential race. Bernie Sanders was just released from the hospital in Las Vegas. His doctors now confirm he did, in fact, have a heart attack. Let's go to our senior Washington correspondent, Jeff Zeleny, who's watching all of these developments. What are you learning, Jeff?
Wolf, good evening. Just a short time ago, Senator Bernie Sanders was released from the Nevada hospital there as we saw him walking out, giving a sign that he's with his wife Jane there, saying he's feeling strong and good. But, Wolf, we are learning for the first time in a statement from his doctor that he did indeed have a heart attack. We have known for the last couple days he had a stent that was put in after a procedure, but we did not know he had a heart attack. So here's a part of a statement from his doctor that the campaign is releasing this evening. It reads like this. It says, after presenting to an outside facility with chest pains, Senator Sanders was diagnosed with a myocardial infarction, and that means heart attack. So, Wolf, this is something that is certainly going to be, a part of the discussion going forward, going to raise questions about when he is going to be able to get back to work. He did release a statement saying he is looking forward to recuperating and getting back to work, but it is the fact that he had a heart attack at the age of 78 that is going to linger over his candidacy here, Wolf, as we get more information about how severe that actually was.
Yeah, this is a very disturbing development indeed. Stand by. I want to bring in our chief medical correspondent, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, who's joining us on the phone right now. Sanjay, so you've got the information. All of us now have the information from his campaign. What do you think?
There was another piece of information in there as well, Wolf, in that he was diagnosed with this heart attack at the first hospital that Senator Sanders was taken to. That was what prompted him to go to the second hospital and have this heart catheterization. So they did know about this heart attack very, very quickly after he went to that first hospital, Wolf. What we know now is that 2.5 days later, he's out and about. He's discharged from the hospital. While they didn't say in that statement if this was a mild heart attack or moderate or severe, it's more likely to be on the mild side given how quickly he's been discharged. Here's the way I think to really think about it. The heart is a muscle. It's not getting enough blood flow. As a result of that, there's certain heart muscle tissue that dies. And that's what a heart attack is. Once you restore the blood flow, the symptoms of chest pain, shortness of breath, other symptoms, those improve. The question now is, how significant was that heart attack? Will it affect his heart function going forward? Meaning, will it make him less likely to be able to exert himself as fully? Again, the only clue we have is that 2.5 days later he's leaving the hospital, and that's a good sign. I'm sure there's going to be follow-up exams to try and determine just how strong his heart is in the weeks to come, Wolf.
He had 2 stents that were inserted. Is that enough potentially to solve this problem?
Yeah, I think, when the procedure that was likely done before the stents was an angiogram where you're injecting dye into the blood vessels that lead to the heart, and you're looking for blockages. If there had been several arteries, these are called the coronary arteries that go to the heart, there have been several of those that had blockages. At that point, the medical team has a decision to make. Do we go ahead and do what's called a coronary bypass operation? And that's open heart surgery where you're actually bypassing those vessels. He didn't have that done, which suggests that there wasn't a sort of broader diseased vessels around his heart. There was one that seemed to be a problem. That one seemed to require 2 stents. That's what we're hearing from these statements, putting them together, and that seems to have addressed this problem. Again, the fact that he had a heart attack, that's been the question all along, and now we know the answer to that. What we still don't know was how significant was it, how much heart muscle tissue was affected, and how strong will his heart be going forward. The only thing we know are the images that you're seeing where he's up and about, walking around, saying he'll participate in the debates, and those are all very good signs, obviously.
Well, we do know that just before he went to the hospital, he was out there campaigning. He was in Las Vegas, and he was standing and answering questions from people who just came to one of his town halls. And all of a sudden, he said, "Get me a chair. I've got to sit down." We have that video of him sitting down, and then they brought over a microphone to him to deal with this. Clearly, this is a serious problem. Someone who's 78 years old, has a heart attack, has 2 stents inserted. What kind of recovery? How long will he be on the sidelines, do you think, from the campaign trail? What are his doctors telling him? Because we all know Senator Sanders is a very lively guy. He goes out there. He's very assertive, very energetic. But presumably this is going to cause him to slow down.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. Though Wolf, one of the objectives of this procedure, of this stenting procedure, is to really restore someone back to their way of life. Any muscle, if you're exerting it and it's not getting enough blood flow, it hurts. That's the chest pain that people feel. If it was happening in your arms or your legs, or in this case your heart, that's the pain. Once you restore the blood flow, you feel better. And the point of me saying that is that someone who has that blood flow restored may in fact in some ways be more vigorous than they were before. Now you add on this new information that we've just learned, that he had a heart attack. And the significance of that isn't so much that means that he'll continue to have pain, right? Because that has been addressed now by opening up that clogged artery. The issue there is how much of his heart muscle tissue was affected, how much of his heart muscle tissue went without adequate blood flow, and as a result had cells within his heart that died. If it's minor, it may not be something that will be very noticeable. You'll still be able to be vigorous, go upstairs, be active. If it was moderate or severe, he may be more affected by that. He may, get tired more easily, develop shortness of breath more easily. So the pain, the symptom of pain that took him to the hospital in the first place. And by the way, Wolf, it's one thing just worth pointing out, and you and I have talked about heart disease in the past. Someone has pain, they go get it checked out right away, which he did. That is what you need to do. I mean, that likely saved his life, going in right away, and it's always an important message. But that pain that took him to the hospital is probably now gone. It's now just a question of this muscle. How strong is it compared to before the heart attack? We don't know the answer to that. The only thing we have are clues. Again, discharged within 2.5 days, saying that he's going to, go forth with the participation in debates and, being out of the hospital, up walking around. Those are all positive signs.
Yeah, but Sanjay, the pressure on him out there on the campaign trail to do what he's been doing is going to be enormous right now. What's your recommendation? Someone who's 78 years old, just had a heart attack, had stents inserted. Shouldn't that person calm down for a bit, rest, recuperate, get his strength back, and then maybe in a few weeks go back out on the campaign trail if he wants to?
I think there's not hard and fast recommendations regarding this. I think that the one important point, though, Wolf, he probably, even though the symptoms that he had, I guess, Tuesday night that took him to the hospital were severe enough to go to the hospital, it's likely that this blockage in his heart had been affecting him for some time. I mean, he may have had some symptoms that were milder over the last several weeks. We don't know. But now that blood flow is restored, on one hand, Wolf, those symptoms have been addressed, so he'll probably feel better. So that's one part of the equation. The other part of the equation is exactly what you're bringing up. If the heart muscle tissue, a significant amount of it was impacted by that lack of blood flow, impacted by this heart attack, then he may tire more easily. Still, he may not be as able to expend as much energy as he was in the past. As far as what the doctors will tell him, again, part of the reason you do these procedures is to, get someone back to their way of life. If you didn't do that, you would essentially tell someone that they, needed to be bedridden, could not exert themselves, could not do anything to have the heart demand more oxygenated blood. In this case, they're saying, okay, we've opened up the blood vessel. The heart is now getting blood flow. You shouldn't have those symptoms of pain anymore. If this was a mild heart attack, my guess, Wolf, and I'm speculating at this point, obviously, but if it was a mild heart attack, my doctors would say, look, we want to check in with you again in some time frame within the next several weeks, but probably clear him to go back to being active. Maybe telling him to cool it a little bit. He's very active, but there's no hard and fast rules here, Wolf.
There certainly isn't. I want you to stand by, Sanjay. David Chalian, our political director, is watching all of this unfold. What are your thoughts as we see the confirmation now that Senator Bernie Sanders did, in fact, have a heart attack?
Yeah, well, my first thoughts are it's nice to see Bernie Sanders leaving the hospital on his own accord, putting his fist in the air, listening to Sanjay say that all that pain is likely alleviated here. But Wolf, our three frontrunners in this race are all in their 70s. Age has been a topic of conversation already in this race, and this certainly will make sure that conversation stays front and center in many ways. There's also a reason why presidential candidates at some point in this campaign process, put out medical records, and that is to show the country that they're healthy and fit and vigorous and can handle the job. And so no presidential candidate obviously would design, apart from the health matters, how nobody would want a heart attack, but no campaign would want to see that their candidate has had a heart attack and is going to take a break from the campaign trail. Of course, first and foremost, you're concerned for the human being, but the political fallout is this will now be a question around his campaign going forward. Everyone will be watching when he returns to the campaign trail. Is he as vigorous as he once was? Does he feel completely himself with the ability to see this race all the way through the distance here? So I do think that there will be questions around Sanders when he does eventually return